Welcome to everyone. My name is Mark Elliott. I am the um, director currently of the Data Science MSc, although I'm handing over to my colleague Simon Rudkin in the autumn. But I'll still be around. I teach on the programme and I'll run the research project, which we'll talk about shortly. What am I going to talk about today? I'm going to give you an overview of the program, structure, form, content, etc. And then I will talk through some important pre-sessional activity that you can get involved with during August. And then what will happen during induction week, also known as welcome week. Okay, the program first. So this program is inherently interdisciplinary. So why have we done that? The reason is that when we were building the program, this is way back in 2015, we had a big consultation with partners, strategic partners to the university. And we asked them a simple question: what do they need from an MSc data science graduate? And they were very clear, actually, pretty much consensus that it was possible to recruit people with technical skills. Not easy, but it was possible. But what was impossible was recruiting people with technical skills who also had the capacity to work in interdisciplinary teams. And when you think about it, it's kind of obvious. So a data scientist does not have an existence outside all the other functions in the company. So one day you might be working on a project with marketing, the next day on management information systems, the time after that on sales, the time after that in HR, and then legal, and so on. Every department in an organization, company, government department, whatever it is, will have need for data science. And therefore data scientists need to be able to work with all of those people. And you can think of data science as being a triangulation of maths, stats, computer science, and then some domain knowledge. And the domain knowledge component is also really important. So we designed our program from the bottom up with that in mind. And so we have people teaching on the program, who develop modules on the program and teaching on the program from across 6 schools at this university. And similarly, students come with a very broad range of skills, and that's a deliberate design choice. So we'll get people coming from humanities, business, computer science, mathematics, engineering, physics, etc. We really do take people from a real range of disciplinary backgrounds. And that melting pot that you enter really enhances your learning. Not just about the actual techniques, which is obviously really important and still very much emphasized, but in terms of how they are actually worked out in practical terms in the real world. And I'll talk through how the program is structured to facilitate that. There is also a mixture of individual and teamwork, and again, this is really meant to map onto what a data scientist does in their employment, in industry, in government, third sector, wherever. So you will all be doing individual projects, coding, etc. on your own, and then you'll be working in teams, both of data scientists, but also with other disciplines. Okay, so this is the calendar, and it is much as you'd expect. So induction is the week of the 22nd, that's welcome week. And then the actual teaching starts on the 29th of September. We have the usual UK breaks for Christmas and Easter. And then there are 2 semesters, there are exams at the end of each semester. Your program finishes on the 8th of September, so it's nearly a full year when you hand in your research project videos. I'll come to that later. Okay, so this is the overall structure of the program. So we have the orange boxes here, which represent the core modules, and the green boxes represent what happens in your own pathway. So you're all applied for a specific pathway, and your pathway is effectively your home for the duration of the program. So there's 3 pathway specific modules, 1 in the first semester, 2 in the second semester. You are allowed to apply to do 1 module from another pathway of those 3. So you put in an application and it is not guaranteed, whereas the electives that are available on your pathway are guaranteed. The ones that are available on other pathways are not. So you apply, you have to demonstrate that you have good reason to want to do that. It has to be approved by the program director, your own pathway lead, and by the person who owns the module you want to do. One of the main considerations is, does that module have capacity to take on extra students? So that's a very straightforward thing. So, and I would say probably about 25% students choose to do an out of pathway module. And then the research project also is done within your pathway. You're supervised by somebody within your pathway, and you go on. This goes on throughout the year. I'll talk you through the details of that shortly. Okay, so for the core modules, so those are those orange blocks on the previous slide. 4 of them have a standard format. So you'll have 1 90-minute lecture and 1 90-minute practical session each week, and then some outer class exercises, reading, etc., either individual or group. And then the exception to that structure is the applying data science module, which I will get to in a few minutes. Okay, so I'll now go through the core modules. So this is understanding databases, and if you're from a computer science background, you'll recognise this. It's a bit of a different emphasis to perhaps what you covered on your computer science undergraduate course, if that's where you've come from. But nevertheless, this will be familiar to you. Now, all parts of the programme will be more familiar to some students than others. That's just the way it's structured. We've got to get everybody up to the same level. So that's what the core modules are designed to do. So you're covering SQL, NoSQL, then you're talking about the mathematics underlying databases, relational algebra, relational calculus, and then how it interacts with various other systems, especially Python. So this is understanding data and their environment. And this is about the externalities and the pipeline of data processing. So you talk about collecting data, generating information about data, that's metadata, paradata, into data provenance, then the notions of reproducibility and fair, then specifically going through the mechanics of the data pre-processing pipeline, thinking about things like data integration, missing data, and so on. And then you do 2 weeks on visualization. So this is statistics and machine learning. Now, stats and machine learning will be familiar to those from a maths background, particularly the first semester. So you'll recognise these topics if that's your background, and you may also recognise them even if it's not. If you're not from a mathematics background, you will find this tough going in the first few weeks. There's no making bones about this. We've got to get you up to the standard where you can go to an employer and say you're a data science, and that just requires a certain level of statistical knowledge. So we will push you through this. Now, what tends to happen, and obviously we've been doing this for quite a long time now, you'll be the 8th cohort, or is it 9th? I can't remember now, I've lost count, but there's something like that. What tends to happen is that students find that around week 6, 7, something like that, the light bulbs start to go on, they begin to understand the material. So they're essentially caught up with where the maths students are. And interestingly, although people from maths backgrounds who are on the maths pathway typically do better on the program, on this module than other students, it's not by much, it's a few percentage points. So you can catch up, you will need to put the work in. Now, the key thing is you can get yourself well prepared for this, and I'll talk about how you can do that when I get through to that section of the presentation. So then in the second semester, which interestingly, although it's the slight notionally more advanced module, much more focused on machine learning, it is something that generally students find easier than the first semester module, because by this point in time they begin to understand all the statistics and so on. But again, you probably recognise topics: dimension reduction, supervised and unsupervised classification, neural networks, MCMC, etc. Okay, so this is the applying data science module, which, as I mentioned, is very different. It's not a taught module. Here you have an external project with an industry partner. So what happens here is that you're formed into interdisciplinary teams, so across the pathways, and your team will actually effectively act as a team of consultants to an industry partner. So industry partner has produced a brief for a data science project that they need doing. So these are real projects, they're not toy projects, and often using the industry partner's data, but maybe an external data source, depending on what needs doing. So there's a brief, you have to meet it, you're acting as a team of consultants, you produce a report, you're assessed on that report, and the report is also delivered to the industry partner. So students generally really like this module because it gives them that kind of grounding in real world activities and applying what they've learned to a specific use case. Okay. This is just to give you some idea of the typical partners we've had. So all these people have been partners on the program, I think, over the last couple of years. So you see we've got big companies like IBM, British Aerospace, and then we've got small companies like FIS Global, Polestar. We've got third sector organisations like the National Counter Voluntary Organisations and the Tony Blair Institute. And then we've got government organisations as well. The Government Actuarial Department is here, the Information Commissioner's Office, etc. So that's just to give you an example. This won't be the list that you'll be engaging with, but it gives you an example of the range of partners that we've engaged with. Okay, now on to the extended research project. So this is the thing you do instead of a dissertation. And again, this is deliberate. We've designed it because we wanted to make this much more appropriately structured for mapping onto what data scientists do in the workplace, rather than a traditional academic qualification. So project selection and allocation happens during the first semester. Supervisors on your pathway will create project outlines. So these are one-page descriptions of potential projects. And typically these will be lined up for more than one student. So these are circulated to students at the end of November, and then students rank preferred projects by January 31st. We allocate students to projects, and then we're away. So the project allocation takes into account student preferences, but also any supervisor preferences. If you want to do your own project, this is possible. I'd say about 5% of students do their own project. So you identify the project at an early stage, really important. You just work out what it is you want to do and go and have a conversation with your pathway lead. Because the critical thing is we need to identify a supervisor. So you will need to identify a supervisor. Your pathway lead will assist you with this. So the advantage of this, obviously, is you get to design your own project. The disadvantage is we have to find a supervisor who has some expertise in the thing you want to do. So critically, we won't have projects supervised by academics who don't have expertise in the topic of the project. So really important you get that expert input. So then you would write and submit a proposal, which is then evaluating. If it's approved, then you can go ahead. So the extended research project during semester 2. So in early February, projects are allocated and supervision starts. Very gentle at first. It's obviously in parallel to your taught courses, but it's good to get started. Weekly classes on research methods and special data science topics will happen throughout the semester. I'll describe those in a moment. And at the end of the semester 2, you then submit your research project plan. So you've been given an outline by your supervisor, but that may cover 3 or 4 different students' projects, and you've got to work out what it is you're going to do in that context. So this year, for example, I am supervising projects on gender equality indexes, so how to create measurements of gender inequality. And I've got one student who's generating the index for China. I've got another student who's generating an index for Greater Manchester. And a third student is looking just at financial aspects of inequality. So they've all generated their own project within that framework that I've provided. And the essence of that is that you really need to think about through and make a coherent plan. And this works through to what you would need to do in the context of the workplace. Project planning is really important. So you get graded on your project plan. It's part of the mark for the project. Okay, so the research methods training I mentioned just now. So you have an intro and talking about planning in the first week, unsurprisingly. So we give you some support on how you create project plans, doing literature reviews, reproducible research, and ethics for data scientists. So these first four in the darker green are all compulsory for all students. So the reason for that is these are core skills. Everybody does ethics on this. We guide you through that process. And the light green ones, they're all special topics. Now the situation here is that all of these are modules, elective modules on some pathways. So for example, on the social analytics pathway and the business pathway, you can take the topological data analysis elective. Because they're electives, not all students will do them, but we determine that these are key topics that data scientists should know about. So we've created these special classes for that purpose. So these are advisory, because obviously if you're doing the elective module, there's no point turning up for an introductory class as well. So that's why they're advisory, not compulsory. Okay, extended research project summer. So between mid-June and the deadline in September, you will be completely focused on delivering your research project. So how do we assess this? I mentioned the plan earlier on, and then you produce either a technical report or an academic paper, depending on your preferences and the nature of your project and so on. It's a lot shorter than you would normally expect for a dissertation at master's level. And then additional material. This demonstrates reproducibility, so it'll be a code repository or technical appendix. And then finally a video presentation. And the video presentation is aimed at a non-cognate person. So somebody who isn't a data scientist, basically. So it might be your manager within the company you're working with, imaginary, or it might be a client or somebody who won't necessarily understand the technical details. So it's supposed to be a non-technical presentation where you explain your results. That's the essence of it. And it's 3 to 5 minutes, and it represents a pitch that you might have to do exactly in the workplace. And that's again why it's in the program. So types of learning content, nothing really surprising here. Lectures, presentations, discussions, individual practical work, group work, supervision and mentoring I've already mentioned. Formative feedback happens throughout the course. You can get written feedback, but also verbal feedback in practical classes and so forth. All academics have office hours throughout the year. Some of us have office hours every week, every day during term time. And others do it once or twice a week. But you'll certainly be able to talk to course leaders, pathway leads, program director, etc. Throughout the academic year. Other academic activities you can get involved in whilst you're at Manchester. So seminars, there are seminars going on all the time at this university. So there's lots and lots of departments. I don't actually know how many there are. It's probably something around 60 or 70. And they all have seminar series. So we've got a dense program of seminars available. The core ones from your point of view is Institute for Data Science and AI. So they run fortnightly seminars in term time. So we will send you notification of ones that really cover you, but you can sign up for their mailing list so that you get notified yourself. Then there'll be local seminars within your home pathway which may be of interest. So I've got one here which is my unit, but your own pathways will have 1 or 2 or 3, maybe even seminar series. University support is available for study skills. So if you want to brush up on your presentation skills or your academic writing, that's available. You can also audit courses. So auditing means you sit in on the course, but you don't take the assessment. I'd say about 30% of students choose to audit one or more courses. And then self-study groups obviously form. We don't make this happen. It's up to you to self-organise that. Every year to date, a WhatsApp group has formed for the whole cohort. Some students set up the WhatsApp group for the cohort and everybody's coalesced in that. But obviously, ad hoc groups may form around particular activities or assignments. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the important pre-sessional activity you can get engaged with. Okay, so 3 particular areas. The least important one probably is this one, understanding databases. And I will explain why shortly. So this one I think is where students generally get the grok of this fairly easy, regardless of what background they're from. Obviously, databases is easy for computer scientists. Probably as a minimum, watch this video. It's 20 minutes, and you can pick up quite a bit from the kind of context of that, of what's going to be going on in the course. And then there is a book here that you can pick up, Aho and Ullman, Data Structures and Algorithms. These are all available in the university library, all of the books, but obviously you won't be able to access the library until you arrive, or at least until you've registered, which could be fairly soon actually. Then you'll get access to the library and you can get hold of these, but you can also get hold of cheap second-hand versions on Amazon. You don't need the most recent edition for these. I think you'll be comfortable if you get an older edition. Yeah, and there's various links here. I won't go through these, but you might find these resources useful. You don't need to copy any of these down. I will be sending you a copy of these slides probably tomorrow. Okay, so this is probably more important. I think this one is probably equal importance to the coding one, which I'll come to shortly. Introduction to probability. So if you don't come from a maths background, if you're from maths, you don't need to do this, it's fine. If you don't come from a maths background, then you really do need to do some of this. So the first thing is this Introduction to Probability course on Coursera, which is free to attend. Okay, so there's no cost to attend it, and it will give you the basics of probability. And there are 2 books here as companions. So I recommend you at least do one of these things, and preferably 2. You don't need to do both the books. They're covering the same material essentially, and any introductory probability book will be fine. You just read the first 3-4 chapters. They all cover much the same stuff. But these are the ones we specifically recommend. So definitely try and do one of these things before you arrive, unless you've already got a maths undergraduate degree. And then similarly for linear algebra, I'd say this is slightly less important than the probability one, but still important. Again, we've got this Coursera course and the recommended book here, David Paul. As I mentioned, if you can get hold of an earlier edition, like 2nd edition, cheap, then do that. That's fine, and just read the beginning chapters basically. Okay, work on your coding skills. Now you should arrive with some basic coding skills in Python. How we support this is as follows. So DataCamp. You will be sent a link to the MSc Classroom on DataCamp once you have registered and have a Manchester email address. So this is an arrangement between Manchester University and DataCamp, whereby we can sign all our students up for free access. So you get access for the entire DataCamp for the duration of your stay at Manchester. And this is a useful resource because obviously there's loads and loads of stuff on DataCamp beyond the basic pathways that I'm going to talk about in a moment. So it can be helpful for your project. It can be helpful if you want to learn a specific technique or something of that sort, both in data analytics, but also in coding and programming. And it covers a lot of range of different types of programming languages. The focus for us is Python. We don't do much R. There's a we touch on in a couple of places, you don't need R coding skills. And SQL, obviously, you do on databases, but the main thing is to pick up the Python skills. You can start yourself on the intro sections before you get your Manchester email address, but you will hit a paywall pretty soon. And obviously, if you want to pay for it yourself and carry on, then that's fine. So the Manchester email addresses will come through to me eventually. So I'll get sent a list at some point when you've all matriculated, as it's called. I don't know exactly when that will be. Sometime during August, probably middle of August, something of that sort. Now, if you've registered, I'm going to set up a link. So if people want to get access to DataCamp sooner, then you can then tell me what your email address is on that link, and then I'll add you straight away. Now this won't actually happen until the 11th of August. That'll be the earliest, but I think you'll be able to register and go through the full process by then. Maybe you won't anyway, simply because I'm on leave next week, so I'll be on holiday and I won't be reading my emails. But after that, when I come back, if anybody's filled in the form, then I will immediately put them onto the DataCamp registration and you can get started. But it's not possible until you have your Manchester email address, because it's that domain which is registered with DataCamp. Now, you're recommended to work through the Python Data Fundamentals skill track on DataCamp. So the links here, again, you don't need to copy this down because I'll be sending the slides. So that takes you through all the basics and up to the point where you kind of know how to write functions, do loops, control systems, do basic analytics. And then you follow that up with a single module on object-oriented programming. So that's basically what we want people to have done before they arrive. And one of the things you can do with this, it's very handy, is you can test yourself each point on the skill track. So if you don't know whether you need to go through a particular module, there's a little test at the beginning to assess whether you need it or not. So you can skip to the point where you need to start if you've already got some basics, which many of you do have. Okay, so that's the basic prep. So during September, I'll be available for drop-in sessions online to give you support for this fundamental material. I will notify you about when these sessions are in August. We'll also make available video lectures using the Python analytics tools, Pandas, NumPy and scikit-learn. So those will be available towards the end of September, but when you've registered, basically. And then your pathways will provide Python support during the first 5 weeks of the semester. So that's the setup for Python prep and support. Okay, finally on to Welcome Week. Okay, so there's all hands meetings, 22nd September. There's briefing on the program, update in more detail, university processes you need to know about, and then an opportunity to meet the staff. And then over lunch on either the 22nd or 23rd, you'll have pathway meetings. So you'll meet your pathway lead and other students on your pathway. So this is a point where you might want to discuss the possibility of doing your own project, if that's what you're interested in, but also what electives you want to take. So there'll be a follow-up on pre-sessional work on the 26th of September. So if you have issues or questions about any of the pre-sessional reading or other activity, these are one-to-one sessions with the relevant tutor. And again, you'll be sent more information about these either before or at induction. Okay, so questions. Please type any questions into chat. If you have any questions, you are not required to have questions, but I will happily answer any that you want to type in. Why am I asking you to type them? So just really because I'm creating FAQ. So I do this every year. It's very useful. So any question that any student asks me in any webinar goes into the FAQ, and I circulate that FAQ around the middle of August after the last webinar, which is on the 11th of August. You'll get a copy of these slides in the next few days, probably tomorrow, as I'm going on leave on Saturday. And middle of August, FAQ, I've just mentioned that, and also some example project outlines. So in order to help people think about whether they want to do their own project or the types of things that are available and so on, just give you an idea what they look like, I will send some of those through. So they won't be the ones you'll be doing, they'll be this year's, the 24-25 students' project outlines. And so they'll just give you some idea about that issue. And there'll be a link to this recording that we're currently making, and then an invitation to Data Camp. And I also mentioned I'll send you out a form if you want to let me know your email address. Late August, you should be sent the handbook for the program, and then September there'll be Welcome Week info, and there'll be a link to collect information on elective choices. You will, as part of the registration process, be able to pick your electives, but we are just gathering information on that anyway, because we need to assess if there's any capacity issues that we need to resolve. If lots of students want to do one particular elective, for example, we might need to do something like move rooms and those sorts of things. So we're just doing that as well. So please do complete that when you get sent through that link. If you have any questions between now and Welcome Week, then please do email me at any point. As I mentioned, I'm on leave next week, so I won't answer your email next week, but I generally try and get back to people within 24 hours in the normal run of things. So please do feel free to email me.